Hey friends, welcome with us tonight. It's Hansie Low here from Cape Town in South Africa. We may pause for a second just to make sure that our YouTube is streaming live, but it's fantastic to have you with us. It is evening, it is winter time in Cape Town and in South Africa, and it is fairly cold. I had the fortune tonight, of being without electricity. And we were not quite aware of the fact that we would be out of electricity. So what happened is that we were getting hungry and realized it was evening time and we don't have warm food, and it was quite cold. So we did the unthinkable. I talked about feasting last night, or cheating. And some of you will still see that. Some of you might have seen that already. And we were thinking, what places would be open where there would be electricity, where we could go and buy food? And what came to mind was a fish and chips place. Now, we don't often eat that, but tonight it was a night to go for the fish and chips. So that is what we did. We've gone for the fish and chips tonight. And it was fantastic when we started. So that is what happened. We went out there for fish and chips. Now, the first portion was extremely tough. It was fantastic to eat it, but then it was extremely tough because I'm not used to that amount of fat. I'm not used to that amount of bad fat, so to speak. And we don't like bad fat. We're not used to bad fat. And that's why we believe it's vital that we talk about fat and that we talk about the best fat. So we went out tonight. We had fish. The hake was good, but there was also a layer around the hake, which is, I think, filled with some carbs. And we'll talk a bit about carbs and fats and protein in a minute. But tonight it's all about fats and fats, and eating the correct fats and the correct amount of fats. Those are vital for you. Just to come back to my evening meal, I didn't finish half of it. And luckily, we've got somebody coming in tomorrow, working with us tomorrow during the day. So part of that is going to be a meal. It's fantastic and it's tasty, but it was just too much for me. My body couldn't quite handle that. So when we look at the things that we can eat, that we're allowed to eat, we talk about the macronutrients. And there are three broad categories of macronutrients. And you probably know that, but just to get a complete picture, let me just write them down. And then we'll get back to them in terms of a bit more detail, just in terms of the percentages that you need of the different ones. The first thing that you have is proteins. The second one is carbohydrates. And the third one would be fats. And typically what if we think about fats, we think about the fat that's in the meat, the extra fat along the side of a piece of meat like a steak or so. And a lot of people cut those fat away. And if we talk about fats, that's not really what we refer to, but we'll come back to that in a while to explain what are fats and where you can get the best fats. Now, when people talk about protein, your typical diet would say, or nutrition guidelines would say some 20% or maybe 30% must come from protein. I'm just going to use a figure of 20. And then they say most of what you're eating must come from carbs. So they say maybe 70% from carbs, and then they say 10% from fats. And I've just jotted that down. I'll just show this to you on my pad here that you can see what I'm referring to. So if we look at the three main components of what we should be eating, it's protein, carbohydrates, and fats, and that's a normal ratio that people talk about. Sometimes they talk about 30 for protein and carbs at a different level, slightly lower, and then fats maybe the same level or slightly higher. But if we look at what the keto guys suggest, they say, and I'm going to explain just now what keto is and what it means. They say, no, we've got to turn this on its head. This may be something like 30 for your protein. Your fats must be something like 60. Let's call it 60. And this, your carbohydrates, must be something like 10. Now, that is totally different from your normal recommendation. And we will talk a bit about why. So tonight we're talking about fats. The fats and the correct amount of fats is the third secret out of the secrets that we'll be covering. Just a reminder of what we've covered already, just to do a bit of revision. The first day, we talked about fasting, the fact that you can stay without food for 12 hours or 14 hours or 16 hours, or even up to 72 hours for some people or longer. So you stay without food. Sometimes you stay without food and without water or any other liquids. But ideally, after a couple of days, you should have your liquids and you should have enough electrolytes to balance what is happening in the body or what is not happening in the body. Because if you drink a lot of water, for instance, and nothing in the water, it will flush out the electrolytes, and you get to a stage where you'll drink water and the water just won't be absorbed. So what is keto, and what does ketones mean, and what is ketosis, and are there dangers to keto? And yes, there are dangers to keto, and you must be aware of what dangers there could be. We're not going to go into the details of the dangers tonight. I'm just going to explain a bit about what keto is. So if we look at keto, keto essentially means that the body is switching its fuel source. It's almost like if I can use as an example, you have an aircraft, and the aircraft does have tanks, fuel tanks, and they often have fuel tanks on the wings, on the wings of the aircraft, those, or inside the wings of the aircraft. That would be fuel tanks, and they will normally take tanks from the different sides to feed the aircraft. But the aircraft can easily switch from one tank to the other tank. And in certain aircraft, depending on what type of aircraft it is, they will have fuel tanks underneath the plane as well. So they can switch easily. But the beauty of the fuel for the aircraft is it's the same fuel all over. So it doesn't matter which tank it's coming from, it's the same. But in your body, we have almost three fuel tanks. We have protein, so we can get energy from protein. We have fat, we can get energy from there, and we have carbohydrates. Now, all of us, or let me put it this way, most of us, you and I, are used to get our fuel from the carbohydrates. And that's an easy place to get it from. You are tired, you feel a bit lightheaded, and you grab a banana and you eat the banana. And once you have had the banana, after a few minutes, you'll feel that the energy is coming back. And that's what's happening because it's easy for the body to get the energy from there. Another place where it's easy to get energy from is from a Coke, another soda drink with high in sugar. So the sugar could just revive you in a minute. They tell the story about the Comrades Marathon. Now, the Comrades Marathon is an annual race, normally annual, but with COVID, it's a bit different. But an annual race that takes place between Durban and Pietermaritzburg in South Africa. Sometimes they run the one direction from Durban to Pietermaritzburg, and sometimes the other way around. And they tell the story of how this one athlete was running a good race. And a guy with the name of Johnny Halberstadt. And Johnny was running and running and running, and he was doing exceptionally well. And then suddenly, it seemed like his whole world just fell apart. So there was nothing left. And I don't have the exact details of that now, but I think he was probably within 10 kilometers of the end. And this is almost a 90-kilometer race. Now, 10 kilometers from the end, and you in the lead or very close to the lead, and you collapse and you've got no energy. That's tough when that happens. So what they managed to do, they got him Coke. Now, Coke, of course, apart from the caffeine that's in there, it's full of sugar. So he had this 2 liter of Coke, and it replenished, I think, electrolytes as well, but it replenished the energy. The sugar came back. The sugar was absorbed quickly in the body, and he could run and finish the race and could run a superb race in the end. But he was out. I mean, if he didn't have that Coke, he wouldn't have lost it for that race. He wouldn't have been able to complete it, unless maybe very, very slowly. But once your energy is gone on a race like that, there's almost nothing that you can do to get it back, apart from a Coke, a 2 liter Coke, or a 1 liter Coke, or some chocolates, just something that would bring energy back quickly to the body. Of course, you can look at better formulas of sports products that you can use to also get that back, but that was quick, just to get some energy back into the body. I remember my first ultra marathon that I ran. I was running, and that was 56 kilometers. It's not as long and far as the comrades, but I was running, and I think I was hitting 45 or 46 kilometers, maybe 47. I can't remember exactly. But to me, it felt as if I didn't know, in 1 minute, from 1 minute to the next, was as if I didn't know where the heck I was. I was in a daze. I touched some of the leaves of the trees because it was quite leafy with a lot of trees in that stretch where we ran. I touched some of them and trying to focus where I was. And I then reached out, and in my running belt down here, I had a chocolate, and I ate this chocolate. And the same thing happened to me. I don't think I was as far gone as Johnny Halberstadt was, but I got the energy back from that, and I managed to complete the race. So the energy from the chocolate revived me, but that's quick energy. So we are used to, and our bodies are used to tap the energy and to draw the energy from the carbohydrate tank. And that tank is almost, it's the closest one that we are used to. So the energy comes from that quickly. There are different theories on how long you can store this carbohydrate energy for you to make use from. And the theory is that it's anything from 1.5 hours to 2.5 hours, depending also on the speed and the intensity of your run and the incline, whether they're hills or not. But that energy runs out. So you have to replenish that when you're running. And that's why some people take, when they run, they take all sorts of drinks to put the energy back to keep them going. So that is running from carbs. Now, running from fats, because we've got fat in our bodies, and they've calculated, and Professor Tim Noakes, one of the leading sports scientists and also ultramarathoner in his days, he claims that there's enough energy in a normal person, and I'm not talking about a fat person, but a normal person, there's enough energy that can be tapped from the fat to run 4 consecutive marathons. Now, a marathon is 42 kilometers. Now, that means that is about 160 kilometers, which is 168 kilometers, which is almost twice, not quite, but almost twice the distance of a comrade's run at 90 kilometers. So the fat is there. The only thing is the body doesn't know how to get the fat. So we know that if you have been running for 1.5 hours or 2 hours, or 2.5 hours, and carbohydrate sources are almost deleted, then the body must go somewhere else to find the energy. And then it will go to the fats. That's the theory. But is there a way to accelerate this? Is there a way to make the body used to get to the fat quicker and almost immediately? And there is a way, and the way is with keto. Now, keto, normally, as a general rule, we say that 40 grams of carbs in a day or less will put you into keto. So that means there's a little bit of energy in the carbs. The body is using that, and then after that, it's looking for something else to use as energy. And then it will find something else, and that's coming from the fat. So it'll start breaking down the fats, and for the way the fat is broken down is it will release ketones in the bloodstream, and the body will use that as energy. So that means you can't just eat an apple or a banana without making sure you know how much carbs would be in there. And the second thing is, ideally, there shouldn't be more than 10 grams of carbs every time that you eat something. So 40 grams of carbs for the day, 10 grams a shot. Now, a way to accelerate this, to make sure you get faster into a state of ketosis, where the body is breaking down fat for energy, is to not take in any carbs, any carbohydrates. And for that matter, do not take in any food altogether. That means if you stay without food for 18 hours, 20 hours or so, 18 hours seems to be the magical number of hours, then the body will start breaking down the fats for energy. So you don't have to wait longer by making sure that your carbohydrates are low and maybe 24 hours or 36 hours before you're in a state of ketosis. You can actually bring it on faster. So this way, if you do it this way, your body knows how to start taking energy from fat. But it doesn't happen overnight. You can't just switch on a different tank like you do in the aircraft. The body must be taught on how to switch on to this different stream. And fasting is a way to accelerate this. Intermittent fasting, when you fast for 16 hours or more, is a great way to start doing this. If you can do a full fast for 72 hours or 96 hours, that will really catapult you into fat burning. The fat burning, though, doesn't happen overnight. We're not sure. It depends from person to person, but 6 months, 9 months, athletes, maybe 12 months, to change from carbs-based running and exercising to fat-based. That also means that if you do fat-based running and fasted running, that you can go out in the morning without any breakfast, without having had anything to eat, and that you can go and run 10 Ks or 20 Ks or 25 Ks. In some instances, people run 40 Ks without having eaten beforehand. Now, that's an interesting subject. That's something that we will discuss at a later stage for people that are interested. But keto, for keto, you want to eat as little as possible of carbohydrates. If you can get that down to 10 grams a day, that's even ideal, but let's work with 40 grams of carbohydrates for a given day. Now, just share with you some details of how much carbs there are in different foods. But so when you do keto, where do you get your energy from? And we don't want to put too much protein in the diet either, in the nutrition plan. But we want to put large quantities of fat in. And this is not the fat that's dripping in the pan when you've fried some eggs or some meat or whatever, or even fish in there. There are different fats. It's not that fat. It might be the fat inside the fish. And I'm just going to talk about that. So that is about keto. Keto is a way to change your fuel source. And to be able to change that fuel source, you will do it easily if you do fast. Now, I want to talk briefly about a company, a nutrition company. I'm not going to go into detail in terms of the company, but I'm just going to call it Company A. And what Company A is doing, and you get Company B, C, D, and so as well, but they have different foods where they, in fact, measure how much protein is in that particular food. So they will have a measurement, and I'm just using an example, and they help you with a shake, and their protein in their shake may be something like 9 grams of protein. Then they could have, in that same shake, they could have carbohydrates, and this is better carbohydrates because you also have to distinguish between bad carbohydrates and better carbohydrates. Your better carbohydrates is normally coming from veggies. So I'll just put this here as a general rule. Normal carbohydrates. Now, that could be anything between 5 grams and 9 grams normally per shake, if that is a protein shake that you're taking from Company A. And then it would have fat. Normally, these guys are conservative on the fat side, so they have low fat in their shakes. It might be 1 gram to 3 grams if it is that high. So what they do is they've got a shake, and they will give you a little bit of fat, they give you carbs, and they give you protein. Certain of their products, they have lower carbs and higher protein. Others, especially when it's linked to exercise, they will increase the carb value of those shakes. Then they would have other products that would help to supplement on the fat side, but normally their shakes would have something of a ratio like these. Ideally, you would want to stick to something where you've got 9 grams and 5 grams. So in other words, about 2 grams of protein for every gram of carb. Ideally, you want to have this higher as well, but you won't find it with Company A or B or C. So what you need to do is, if you want higher fat, you have to supplement this fat yourself. So just to come back to intermittent fasting for a minute, just to remind you, to refresh your memory, intermittent fasting, that's what the IF stands for. You normally start at 8 o'clock at night so that you can sleep. You don't eat the next morning, but you only eat after 12. So that then, if you add that up and subtract it, then you see it's 16 hours. So that's your 16, what they call 16 plus 8 of fasting. 16 hours of fasting, 8 hours that you don't fast. Ideally, later on, you want to push this to 2 o'clock, 2 p.m., so you get to 18 hours and then 6 hours. Now, the question is, this 8 hours, or in this case, this 6 hours that you're eating, what do you eat in that period? Now, I talked a bit yesterday about a guy with the name of Tim Ferriss. Now, Tim talks about a process of slow carbs, not low carbs, but slow carbs. And he says, in terms of his experience, that's the best way to make sure that people stay on it for quite a while. Then we've just talked about keto as a possibility. Keto, you've got to be more careful on what you do and how you tackle it. And then we've just talked about a Company A or Company B that will give you a shake that is where they've carefully calculated, how much of the different aspects and macronutrients you have in that. So let me get right back to fats. So I'm going to talk a little bit about fats and just explain to you about fats, because remember, what we want to do is we want to have about 60% of your nutrition calorie-wise coming from the fats, and that is quite a lot. So how do you get that? How do you get to those amount of fats? And what can you eat and what can't you eat and what shouldn't you eat? There are different aspects of fats, different foods that you can look at for fats. But my question to you is, if I were to ask you, name 1 or 2 or 3 fats, won't you quickly jot down there where you are, what that would be, what that would look like, what you think what a fat is? I'm just going to give you 30 seconds or 50 seconds to be able to do that. So the question is, what fats can you eat? What does it look like? Do you know how much fat there is in a given food? Could an egg, for instance, be a fat? People don't normally associate an egg with fat. Okay, let me get into that. You can eat avocado pear. Your avo would have a good amount of fat in and fiber as well. It's very high in fiber. Your avocado oil, the best avocado oil, is fantastic for you to use as well, with high fat content in there. So apart from the avocado and the avo oil, you can go to nuts, and there are different nuts that you can use. You must just be careful. Certain nuts are not ideal for your fat and for the fat content in there. But you can look at almonds, walnuts, pecan nuts, pistachio, cashew nuts. All of those are high in fat or higher in fat. You don't physically have to, you don't have to use a nut and eat it, but you could have a nut butter or a nut spread or a seed butter, where it is in the butter already, and you just spread it over your favorite, if you're using keto as a basis, your favorite keto cracker, and you eat that, and you get your nuts in, or your seeds in that way. Flaxseed. Flaxseed is an excellent source of fat as well. Your flaxseed, if you have a quarter of a cup of that, it will contain 11 grams of fiber, which is fantastic. It would contain no carbohydrates, 18 grams of fat, and half of that is the omega-3 fat, which is the fantastic, the good one. And you have 7 grams of protein. So flaxseed, fantastic. Now, flaxseed on its own, if you have a spoon and you're eating flaxseed, I almost can't imagine that you would do that after the first bite or so. But if you have your flaxseed and you put that into a smoothie, then you get that fat content. So let's just go back to what I shared with you, that the protein shake of the company A that I was talking about, they've got 1 gram or so, or 2 grams maybe of fat in the particular shake. So if you add this to the shake in terms of a smoothie, then suddenly you've got 18 grams of fat in there. You've got 7 grams of protein that you add. So it's a fantastic thing to add to your shake, to your protein shake. So that's one way. Add it to your smoothie. Then you can sprinkle it on your salads. If you're eating salad, you can spread and sprinkle it over soups, and you eat it in the soup. So that quarter of a cup of flax seeds will give you quite a bit of fat, 18 grams of fat, in fact. So that means that your fat will be more than twice your carbs if you would do that. Because remember, 18 grams of fat from here, and I said that your shake, your normal shake, protein shake, with a bit of carbs in there would be roughly 9 grams. So if you want to aim to get your fat for the day 50% or higher, then every time you eat, if you have twice the amount of your carbs, then you're fairly safe for the day. Then hemp hearts or hemp seeds, and hemp in our local language in Afrikaans is hennep. It comes from it's a family of the cannabis, or in South Africa, the dagga plant. But it comes from there, but it's exceptional for good health. So if you have that, and the same thing applies, you can eat it as part of a smoothie. You can sprinkle it over salads or soups and use that. Chia seed, another fantastic source of fats. Your 1 tablespoon, which is about 15 grams of the seed, will give you about 4 grams of fat. So still your flax seed, which is a quarter of a cup, which of course is a bit more, will give you a good amount, 18 grams of fat. Olives, of course, is fantastic as a snack. You can just have it with you, and whenever you need that extra energy, you can get the fat from there. Just remember, it's not like a chocolate. If you eat chocolate now, you'll get energy almost instantly. But if you eat an olive, the energy will come a bit slower, but it will come through. But not only does it have fantastic amount of fat in, but it also has vitamin E in there. Olive oil, the cold pressed olive oil, you could use as well. Coconut oil, unrefined coconut oil, fantastic source. And then coconut as on its own, you can eat that. Your coconut oils will give you the what they call the MCT. Sometimes if you get in a health shop, you'll find that you can buy MCT, and the MCT you add to your coffee. And the coffee would then have ketones in, so it's almost like a natural keto that you get, but that's not broken down from the body, so you get it immediately. You don't have to wait for that. So it gives you that energy and makes your body used to that. And that's an easy form or easy way of getting into ketosis. Then cacao, if you eat that, and especially cacao bits, nibs, or strips, or that is a great source. If you have about 28 grams of that, you have 12 grams of fat. So again, depending on what type of shake you eat, you can add that to your shake. It's got 9 grams of fiber as well. And remember, we might have touched on this in the past, but just in case we didn't fully explain this, if you have 1 gram of carbohydrate in a meal, but you've got 1 gram of fiber, then you can deduct that 1 gram of fiber from your grams of carbohydrates, which means your net effect in this case would be 0. So if you have 28 grams of cacao in your protein shake from company A that I talked about earlier, the net effect is that you will have 0 carbohydrates in there, which is fantastic if you want to push up the fats and reduce the carbohydrates. Dark chocolate, fantastic source of fat as well, and also of the so-called polyphenols. Now, it's a term that essentially just means it helps with anti-inflammatory effects, so it's good for you, apart from the good feel aspect of the dark chocolates as well. Some full-fat Greek yogurt, if you use that, 150 grams of that will give you 6 grams of fat. Again, fat, a little bit of carbs as well, and then good source of protein. Then let me come back to the fish. I talked about, the hake I had earlier tonight, but your fatty fish, and there are certain fish that you can look at that's better, your salmon, your tuna, and then even something that's cheaper, your sardines and your anchovy. Those are excellent sources of fat and excellent sources of omega-3, because it's omega-3 that you require in the body to really help fight against things like inflammations as such. So your full fat Greek yogurt you can eat on its own. You can mix it with a shake, or you can make another creative dish with that in terms of a vegetable salad. Whole eggs. I talked a bit earlier about eggs. If you eat 1 whole egg, it's about a 56 gram of egg. It will have 5 grams of fat in it, and 7 grams of protein, and no carbs. So again, and sometimes we do this, that when we make a shake, a protein shake, we add some egg to that. So remember, 1 egg that you've added there to that will give you about 5 grams of fat, and 7 grams of protein. You can use your eggs during the day if you've got hard-boiled eggs to just use them as snacks. And remember, they're high in fat, no carbohydrates in the eggs. If you have eggs available, hard-boiled eggs, you can quickly, if you have a bit of mayonnaise, you can change it and make a bit of a salad from there. You can have scrambled eggs with low-carb veggies with that as well to push up your content of fat that you get. Butter is a fantastic source of fat as well. About 80% of butter is fat, and it's carb-free. Now, sometimes people make what they call a coffee, almost like a coffee bomb. And what they do is that either take coconut oil or MCT oil and put that into the coffee, no milk or cream, or they put butter in the coffee. And the first time when I did this, I thought, oof, you know, how can you drink butter in your coffee? And I got used to the taste almost immediately. It is a bit different. The oil is probably a bit cleaner, easier than the butter, because if you clean your cup afterwards, it's a bit of a mess. But the butter is an excellent source of fat. Cheese is a source of protein, also a source of calcium, and some of the cheese will also help you in terms of being probiotic, so that would help you there. Now, there are fats that you must limit. We've not talked about the good fats. There are fats that you must limit, and these are the trans fats. So any highly refined oils, any processed cakes, cookies, pastries, crackers, and then also processed meats. That's highly processed meats. You want to avoid those and have a minimal of that. Your fried foods, like I had some chips tonight fried in oil. I eat this probably once every 3 months, maybe sometimes once every 6 months. So I keep it to the rare minimum that I use that or eat that. But choose your fats wisely. We've covered quite a lot of fats tonight. Try to get to a nutrient-dense piece of chicken, piece of meat, and better than that, but in particular, get to your fish. Very, very high content of fat, good fats in the fish. So stick with the whole foods, the whole egg, and then avoid your processed and your fried fats. And if you do that, you'll get the healthy fats, and you are sure that you'll get to your 50% or higher of fat content for the day. Now, you need to get used to this different way of eating. In the beginning, your body may not agree to that immediately. So it's important that you look at what is the best way to do that and to get your body used to that. Fats, to eat fats is not so difficult. You need to plan your day. You must be sure what to eat. If you want to eat fats, especially like tonight, we were not prepared because we didn't quite know about the electricity that would be off for a while. So we, without thinking much, we just went for some food, which in the end, it was tasty for, the first few minutes, but it wasn't that good, and it wasn't that good for us either. Fats is a fantastic way once you get your way around it. The secret of this, we know now that fat is the third secret that we talk about this, but the secret of the fat is that you get a few foods that you select that you like, and you stick with those foods. So whether you eat them on their own, whether you mix them with something else, or whether you get a fantastic recipe to do it with, that doesn't matter. But select a few that you can stick with, the fats that will help you to get to the right amount. Now, what is the right amount? How do you measure that? There's an app called Yazio. I'm going to spell that. It's Yazio, Yazio. It's an app that's on either your Apple products or on your Android phones. So you'll get that, and the basic app is free. But there you could put in sardines, 125 grams. It'll show you 20 grams of protein. It'll show you so much of fat. It'll show you if there's carbohydrates, and it'll show you the carbs. So that'll give you a picture once you're starting to eat fat, that you know the egg that I eat is about 6 grams. So once you get to know the different foods, you know that you can do three eggs, and it's 18 grams of fat, or you can do the avo, and this size avo will give you this amount of fats, or chia seeds, or for that matter, cheese or butter. Once you get to know that, you'll stick with 3 or 4 things that you know will assist you. And the easy way that I found is to have a basic shake, a protein shake, and that you add that fatty products, the fatty foods to that, so that you can get to your ideal. And if you know every shake that you take, it's twice the amount of calories coming from your fat as opposed to your carbohydrates, and your protein, or equal amount of fats and to carbohydrates, protein. Then you know you're well away. Ideally, if you eat 1 gram of carbohydrate, you want to eat 2 grams of fat or 3 grams of fat, so that you can get to a situation where you have 60 grams of fat and 20 grams, 10 or 20 grams coming from carbohydrates, and the rest coming from proteins. Then it's easy. So make a plan your day, plan your meals, and then go for it. Get to your fats, and the best way is actually then to squeeze it into intermittent fasting, whether this is an 8-hour window or a 6-hour window, or some people squeeze it even smaller. They squeeze it into a 4 or a 2-hour window. But eat in that time, and do keto as one of the ways to accelerate your state, where you can get a body that can eat and have energy, taking the energy from fats and not from carbs. We'll chat soon. I'd love to talk to you, hear what you've experienced. Love to talk to the athletes as well, to see how they perform over time, and how they perform better, and how they can actually get energy from fats when the carb energy source has been depleted. Hans Hilo signing out. We'll chat to you soon. Bye-bye.